measurement can be quite fragmented, and to compare fairly, as we were just talking about in the previous paper, a fair comparison requires clarity on what exactly we are measuring and where we're measuring that.
Hello, and welcome to Environment Variables, brought to you by the Green Software Foundation. In each episode, we discuss the latest news and events surrounding green software. On our show, you can expect candid conversations with top experts in their field who have a passion for how to reduce the greenhouse gas emissions of software. I'm your host, Chris Adams.
Hello everyone, and welcome back to the Week in Green Software, or as we call it, TWiGS from Environment Variables. We've got a packed set of stories this week, a brand new Green Software Foundation website, some research that challenges the very common assumption faster equals greener. Then we've got a practical roundup of open source tools to measure energy use. And we will also take a look at a broader debate on what digital sustainability should even mean and how we can take a different perspective on things. Joining me today is my favorite partner in crime, Valeria Salas. Valeria, what's on your radar?
Hi everyone, and hi Adi, and I'm super excited to discuss everything we have today in our agenda. We have a lot of topics. And everyone, I think that you already know us. We are sustainable advocates. We like to talk about sustainability. And we also today have some research, which we were waiting for a long time. And I think that we can and have to start with the first topic of the day. And so this episode won't be long, like 5 hours.
Yes, I completely agree. And I'm also very excited to have you, Valeria. So without further ado, let's dive into our discussion for the day. And the number one thing that I want to start with is what Valeria already mentioned, research on what is exactly going on with speed and energy. So before we start, I just want to put the facts on the table of how people generally assume things. People assume that if something runs faster, it consumes less energy, because if it runs faster, it shuts down, and then you can stop burning power, and then it overall consumes less energy. That is how commonly people reason about energy use. But recently we have this very interesting paper which demonstrates this is not always the case. And to be fair to the authors, the paper is called Benchmarking the Energy Savings with Speculative Decoding Strategies. It's a paper out of the Indian Institute of Technology, Karlsruhe, and the Indian Statistical Institute, Kolkata. It's a very interesting paper because this paper looks at speculative decoding strategies that can speed up LLM inference, and then demonstrates lower latency does not automatically mean lower energy use. Now, there's a lot to unpack here. Valeria, would you like to just quickly tell me what you think about this?
Well, it's a super interesting paper. It's 10 pages packed with information and data and equations and math and so on. So we won't be talking.
The link will be included in
yes, because otherwise we would need 4 hours just for this one. But when I read the title of the paper, I was like, what's speculative decoding? I've never heard of speculative decoding. And I felt I was like, oh, I missed a big point on AI, on LLMs and so on. But basically it's something that you were actually explaining before. It's basically a practice to make inference cost less, basically. But there are various perspectives that you can look at it. And I think that on the more technical side, you're very much more prepared on this. But yeah, basically, the fact is that usually people tend to link energy consumption with speed of execution, but it's not always like that. There are some exceptions, and it's just one single part and one single part of the bigger process, on the bigger image, on the bigger picture.
That is exactly right. I completely agree with you that this common belief, which I've heard, by the way, from many people, it's incredibly widespread. Before we dive deeper, just for everyone's benefit, what is speculative decoding? So we've often heard that these LLM models are quite big, right? They have billions of parameters. For example, 3 billion, 7 billion, 100 billion. They're going bigger and bigger and bigger. Now, the question is, how do you run this model? It's actually super hard to run a bigger model because you need to load all the weights into memory. And that's a very expensive and time-consuming process. So scientists or the engineers at these companies are very clever, and they came up with this very interesting idea that you don't run the full model every time. What you do is you run a smaller model, and then the bigger model verifies the output of the smaller model, while the smaller model runs much faster. The bigger model simply has to do the checking. And this enables it to give you the answer instantly, what we see in our applications and in our requests. We send the request and immediately we get the answer. That's because the smaller model, which is much faster and cheaper to run, is producing the answer, and the bigger guy is just checking if it's correct or not. It's a fascinating process, which I can talk about all day.
Yeah, I have a question. So, on the energy consumption perspective, do we just consider like the energy consumed by the the people that are supporting this strategy? Are they just considering the energy consumption by the smaller model? What about the big brother? Like, do the energy how does the energy consumption work in this case, and how do you compact them?
Exactly. That's the $1 million question, Valeria. That's the $1 million question. How do we compare them? So just because we are able to get the answer faster from the smaller model does not mean that I've reduced my energy. In fact, this paper shows that we have increased the energy consumption because now I'm running two models in parallel.
Yes.
I'm running the smaller one and the bigger one, and I have to pay for both of them. So this is incredibly missing from what people imagined, right? I don't know, Valeria, what do you think? What do you think we should treat as the primary success metric for green inference? Given that now we know we're running two models in parallel, should it be joules per token, cost, latency, or something else?
This is another $1 million question. I see so many different papers that maybe one consider cost per token and another one the inference. I think that all of the options have both pros and cons, and
I agree.
We don't have standards on this, so everyone basically can choose the option that is more comfortable with their numbers. And so
that's exactly what happens.
And this leads also to misinformation, miscalculations, and to everything that actually do not help the sustainability advocates at all. Because if I try to compare apples with pears, I don't have anything, I'm comparing two different things. Yes.
Exactly. Exactly. Yes.
So I don't I'm not that expert on this topic. So I don't think I'm able to choose a single metric, but we have to choose one and then go with that.
Yes.
And so
everyone needs to agree on one metric.
Yes. Yeah, it's so crazy. With AI, it's super it's the most common problem. I always see with the public reports and public data, some companies are using this type of metrics and the other one is using this other one. It's basically linked to what we were talking about in our previous episodes with hourly carbon accounting. It's the same issue. And so I don't think I have the single answer, but this is this is one of the problems that we would have to solve at some point. What do you think,
I
Adi?
completely agree. I completely agree that this is something that people need to come together and decide that this is fair and this is not fair. I don't know when that day will come, but one day that day will come for sure. So
We will have an episode dedicated
yes.
to that.
yes,
Yay,
yes,
we've
absolutely.
come to the single metric. We would be super happy.
Yep. Until then, until that day, maybe it would be interesting if people can report the number of flops or the number of computation operations that they do when running the models, because you have to compute the flops, right? You cannot run away from computing the flops, and if the total number of flops increases, it's not a direct correlation, but your energy hopefully could also increase. This is maybe sometime in the future we'll invite a professor and professor can teach us how the energy actually burns through different flops. But
Would be super
it's a-
interesting.
yes, just to let our viewers know, we are very happy to have you on board. If there are any researchers, any scientists, or any professors who are listening to us, please contact us, and we would be very happy to discuss your research, your ideas, and your work on TWiGS by Green Software Foundation.
Yeah, or any projects you're working on. Yeah.
Yes,
Please share
we
it
would love
with
to
us.
have it.
Yeah.
Please share it with us so we can tell the world about it, because your work is good work and it needs to be shared.
Yes, definitely. You
Perfect.
you shared basically an inspirational sentence with that.
Yes. I think it is truth. Like,
Yes.
it is the absolute truth that if you're working in sustainability, it's a good space to work in, and I want to hear about it.
Yeah. Also, part of our job is spreading awareness. So why
Yes.
not making people heard with their projects, with their ideas, with what they maybe are doing in their local communities?
Yes.
Like we want that. Yeah.
And that is exactly right. And that is why we will discuss a number of open source tools
Yes.
that are used to measure software energy consumption. So we found another great paper which basically surveyed GitHub. The process is called, I believe they call it mining. Mining software repositories, MSR approach. So what they did was they mined different repositories on GitHub and then figured out a lot of tools to measure carbon and energy efficiency that are known today over the years. It's a great paper. Well, just to be fair to the authors, the paper is called A Curated List of Open Source Software Only Energy Efficiency Measurement Tools, a GitHub Mining Study. It's a fascinating paper because I've heard of a number of these tools over the years. For example, I see all the big guys in here: Scaphandre, Kepler, Jolt, Zeus, Pumas, PowerStat. All of these tools I had heard of them individually: CodeCarbon, Carbon Tracker, Cardamom. But this paper pulls them all together and it studies them, where they're good at, where they could improve. And I think that is fascinating. So this is a great step in the direction of letting people know what tools they can use to measure their carbon emissions. What do you think, Valeria?
I think it's great. Sometimes whenever I'm at a conference or at an event and I talk about digital sustainability and software sustainability, one of the most asked questions are, but can you name a couple of tools that we can try, that we can work with, that we can make some experiments? And so these kind of papers, it's great. Because right now, I think that there are so many tools. Like, these are not the only 27 that are out there. And sometimes, whenever you have so many choices, your mind freezes because your mind cannot choose.
I know.
Like, if you have 3 choices, it's a bit easier to choose one of them.
Yes.
If you have 30 choices, you have to read all the readme.
Impossible to compare. Exactly.
Yeah, it's very it's complicated. And so this kind of paper was oh wow, this is super super cool. I agree with all the names. Like I knew a couple of the names that you shared. One I wanted to also highlight a couple of ones that you didn't nominated because some of the people that developed the other tools that I will be nominating now are like some of my friends or people that I actually have known during these years, and so I'm like I want to give a shout out to them. And one is the Green Metrics tool by Green Coding Solutions, and the other one is Ecologits. These are super cool tools. But yeah, coming back to the paper, I think that these type of papers will actually help so much people that are trying to maybe make experiments on their projects or like want to basically make their hands a bit dirty with new projects and try something. So yeah, I think it's super great, and I'm super happy that we are talking about it in this episode.
Exactly. And one thing that I saw very often is many teams, when they would try to implement sustainability measures, would get stuck at the first step, which is measurement. How do you measure? How do you determine? How do you find out what is the number of carbon emissions or energy use or anything that you could put in a sustainability report? Mm-hmm. The teams simply don't know which tool they can use for their programming language, for their platform, for their cloud service provider, and even for their level of access. So this paper is a really good way to just clear the space, clear the clutter, and then easily understand which tool would be best suited for your particular use case.
Yeah.
It also highlights something very interesting, which is, let's say, not very often discussed. Measurement is hard. Measurement can be quite fragmented, and to compare fairly, as we were just talking about in the previous paper, a fair comparison requires clarity on what exactly we are measuring and where we're measuring that. So this is a great point that they mentioned, and I think this is something that everyone else should also keep in mind, that we must understand what we're measuring and then do it correctly.
Yeah.
But it's a good step. It's a good step.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Measuring is often one of the very first steps that is suggested to be included in your process, but it's not super easy. And so sometimes teams are like, I don't know how to do this, and I don't know how to like continue doing this and all of that. And so it's one of the, I think that it's part of the process, of course. It's complicated, but it gives you the data that you need to make changes also. Another thing that I wanted to add is that even though you're not 100% sure of your calculations, document them, document the process, and then share it maybe with other people or professionals. Call a professional, please. Do not make your calculations like out of the blue. But yeah, one of the things that I also suggest my clients is documenting, like make a documentation. And so like make it some type of a standard in your process. And then maybe project after project, you will make this, the part of measure, the time of measuring a bit better. And so it's continuous improvement, and you have to start somewhere.
Exactly. As they say in software engineering, continuous integration, continuous deployment, and continuous improvement.
Yes.
That's the important part. But,
yes.
Okay, jokes aside, DevOps jokes aside, guys, DevOps is last decade. This decade is AI. So we will make AI jokes for this decade, okay? But,
oh my, this was very funny.
Yes. On the same line, I want to ask everyone what people understand by the phrase digital sustainability. And I know that we talk a lot about carbon emissions, we talk a lot about green software, but do we fully understand what the word sustainability means? And we found this extremely interesting article by Catherine Mulligan, who argues that digital sustainability cannot be reduced to carbon metrics alone. It needs to balance environmental, social, and economic outcomes. And this is important because carbon is measurable, but it's not the whole story, right?
Yeah.
Your carbon emissions are one part of the entire ecosystem, of the entire planet that we live on. There's rebound effects, there's equity impacts, and there's long-term resilience. And everything can change regardless of our sustainability and regardless of our emissions. So I think it's a beautiful article which reminds us of our humanity, which reminds us of how interdependent we are on each other and how economics, cost, carbon efficiency are small cogs that we focus too much on as compared to the entire machine that surrounds these cogs. What do you think, Valeria?
Yeah, I completely agree with your introduction. This one is the article that everyone in the sustainability world needs to read, I think. Because sometimes we focus on the same, the same topic, which is carbon, of course, but there are so many more topics. There are social aspects, economical, and so many more other micro topics. For example, one of the topics that I think that we've talked about in one of the previous episodes, but if we take aside the carbon and electricity consumption topics, so much less people talk about, for example, water consumption, and it is part of the bigger picture. This one too.
Yes.
Especially
yes.
because
and we need water.
Especially because water is needed for everything for us as humans.
Yeah.
And so if we think about it, using water as a proxy would be maybe a bit more understandable for people rather than carbon, I think. If we don't think about the technical aspects, but in in broadly
understood.
Yeah.
In a way that everyone will understand or
Yes.
would be able to relate to.
Yes, because sometimes you can also make comparisons. For example, this page emits X number of grams of CO2, and it is similar to doing this type of stuff, but it's still a comparison that is not relatable to everyone. Whereas with water, I think it would be a bit more relatable.
I agree with you completely.
Yeah. And would be interesting. I don't know if there are any open source projects that translate assumptions related to energy consumption and carbon emissions with water equivalents. Would be super great. We can look for them.
Yes, any of our listeners, if you know about this project, please come and talk to us. Or this is your hint to do a vibe coding weekend. Consider this your vibe coding project. Build something that tells you how much water your AI energy uses.
Would be great.
I think that'll be very interesting to see. Yes.
I would use that for sure. But yeah, another topic that is actually very related to the article is one of the things that I sometimes try to tell people, and it's that sustainability is super related to other different topics such as accessibility, which is more related to the social part, maybe.
Yes.
And so, yeah, it's a broad topic that you can look at from different perspectives, but basically the goal is still the same, which is trying to make a bit better world that we are than the one we are living in.
Exactly.
So.
Exactly. That's exactly what I think about. Are we doing enough so that we leave the world a better place? I don't know.
Yeah.
I would love to just find out a way if I can know that. But
We can create an open source project which translates our
Yes.
actions and
Guys.
says if we are doing a bit better or we are not
Yeah.
moving from our place right now.
Yes.
We are giving
This
so
is
many more
fantastic.
ideas.
Yes. Guys, this is one more vibe coding project. Please, please, someone vibe code this over their weekend. And but that's a great idea. That's a great idea.
Yeah.
Thanks a lot, Valeria. Yes.
Yeah, no problem.
All right. Yeah. So these were the main topics that we wanted to discuss. And now let's quickly take a look at a very important news announcement for everyone. Drum rolls, please. Green Software Foundation has just launched its new website. So we've got a new redesigned website aimed at helping the organizations to find standards, tools, and practical resources to reduce software emissions. The website highlights real-world examples from organizations measuring software emissions in practice, and it points newcomers to multiple standards and ways to get involved. All in all, it's a great place to start when you think about green software, and that's why the website is called greensoftware.foundation. Super easy to remember, super nice
Yeah.
to use. This is a useful signal that green software is moving now from an interest area, a niche domain, to an operational discipline. And that's where we would love to see it going. Like, that's where I would love for it to keep growing. What do you think, Valeria?
Yeah. I think that it's such a great news. It makes me a bit nostalgic because I remember the first time I opened the Green Software Foundation website. It was like 4 years ago because
Yeah.
it was one of the very first online resources that I read about. And seeing now, well, being part of a podcast from the Green Software Foundation and being able to tell other people, other new practitioners, other new advocates for sustainability is crazy. And also the website is very, very cool.
It's really cool.
Super nice.
It's super nice. Exactly.
Yes. And yeah, we've mentioned so many like vibe coding projects, but no, please take the courses on the Green Software Foundation websites. Take like the Green Software for Practitioner. I don't know if they changed the title, but it's on the platform, which is the Green Software Movement. There's also the soft course. And there are so many more news case studies. Like, please look at the website if you didn't take a look at it already. Please.
Strongly recommended. And the good news is that it's really low on your system. It's really low on emissions. It's optimized for green software. So please, please just take a look, and we would appreciate
Yes.
any feedback on the new website. With that said, let's quickly take a look at green software events and trainings coming up after March 26th. First of all, the event is called When Sustainable Product Design Becomes a Strategic Advantage. This event is on April 7th at 5 p.m. It's a virtual event. The link will be there in the description below. Please make sure to check it out. Up next, PowerBI Dashboard on April 7th at 6:30 p.m. in Karlsruhe and hybrid. This event is on building a GreenOps dashboard across cloud providers, on-premises, and end devices. The meetup link will be there in the description below. Next, we have CodeCarbon times Pruna times Ecologits Frugal AI Party in Paris. So there's a party in Paris, guys. It's on April 8th at 6 p.m. Make sure to check it out and make sure to figure out how much your AI vibe coding is generating in terms of carbon emissions. But this will be a really great event to find that out. And then maybe you can head to a real party afterwards, you know. Paris has no shortage of them. And finally, we have GreenIO Singapore from April 14th to 15th, focused on conscious AI and building environmental responsibility into innovation. GreenIO is a fantastic event. I would recommend you to check it out.
Yes.
If you're in Asia, if you're in somewhere near Singapore, it will be great to just take a hop and try it out. Well, hey, watch out for the flight emissions. Maybe take a ship. But check it out. You know, like the first step in reducing things is to know what is going on. And with that said, that's it for this week's TWiGS. We covered the
Yeah.
new website. We covered why faster AI is not greener AI. And we also took a look at practical catalog for open source energy measurement tools. Finally, we had a very interesting discussion about what digital sustainability could include beyond carbon and cost. Is there anything else that you would like to include, Valeria?
I think we've said so many interesting things, and so I would really, really like to thank you, Adi, for hosting this episode. It was
thank you
super
so
nice.
much for being here.
I had so much fun, and also the events, guys. Please go to the events that we've said before. Like, I would really, really go to them, but some of them are very far away from where I'm living, but some of them are virtual ones. So I think I will be like noting them on my calendar. And then please, again, look at the website, listen to all the other episodes of the TWiGS and environment variables if you missed some of the episodes. I think that we also have the transcriptions from the website. I don't remember, or maybe there are so many other informations on another website, which is under the Green Software Foundation. But yeah, please, listen to our episodes, and also write to us if you have any new ideas, or as we said during the episodes, if you have a project that you want to share, if you're a researcher, please, let's keep the discussion on web sustainability, digital sustainability, and so on going, please.
I completely agree, and I'm 100% on board with you, Valeria. And I'm 100% on board with all of our listeners. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you so much for taking out time from your day. We understand everyone is busy, and we really appreciate that you're making the effort to learn something new. That's what we're here for.
Definitely.
And if you're experimenting with energy measurement in your stack, or you've learned something the hard way about AI efficiency, please let us know. We would love to talk about it. We love featuring practitioner lessons. A final reminder, and I think Valeria did a better job at this than me, all the resources for this episode are in the show description below, and you can anytime, any day, any month, any year visit podcast.greensoftware.foundation to listen to more episodes of Environment Variables. That's all for today, folks. See you all in the next episode. Take care and have a great weekend.
Bye.
Bye.
Hey everyone, thanks for listening. Just a reminder to follow Environment Variables on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. And please do leave a rating and review if you like what we're doing. It helps other people discover the show, and of course, we'd love to have more listeners. To find out more about the Green Software Foundation, please visit greensoftware.foundation. That's greensoftware.foundation in any browser. Thanks again, and see you in the next episode.